I'm Priya Kapadia. I head Marico Innovation Foundation. So my journey in the professional world began 20 years ago. When I post my MBA, I was very clear when I did my MBA in marketing that I wanted to be a marketeer and I wanted to, head brands and head businesses, etc. And I began my career in advertising because, you have to understand the creative aspect of business and brand management before you get into the business aspect. And I spent fantastic 4.5 years in advertising with Rediffusion, working on some really interesting brands, which probably to somebody may seem a little boring. Say, for example, I worked with Petrol. I handled HPCL and I branded it was a time when I rebranded their product to Power. The word Power, the branding Power Petrol, and Turbojet came from, when I was in Rediff and I was handling their account. Club HP, rebranding of the entire boring petrol pump into something which is sexy and exciting was something that I worked on. Worked on Z, worked on Godrej Agrovet, worked on a variety of brands, got a lot of experience. And then I went on maternity after my marriage, of course. And once I went on my maternity, I was all set to come back to Rediffusion and work in Rediffusion and continue my journey in the advertising world. And I was lucky I got an opportunity to go for an interview to Citibank. And they knew me because I'd helped them with some projects in the past in my Rediff role. And I went there for the interview and I loved what they were saying and they loved what I was doing and they took me on. And there began my movement from advertising into marketing and brand management. I did a fantastic sojourn in Citi where I worked on micro-marketing, which meant events. I worked on marketing, which meant brand launches, positioning platforms, etc. I worked with media agencies, I worked with creative agencies. And I suddenly realized that, I was kind of bored of banking. And I think I'd figured out, and I wanted to explore creative and different thinking, slightly more. And that's when I was lucky to get an opportunity with the Economic Times. And then I went on to the Economic Times in their marketing and brand management role. I headed their West and the East editions. And in my stint with ET, I did such exciting work. I worked on new product launches. I worked on P&L management. I worked with I worked with editorial, with the salespeople, with the response people, with people who were selling the newspapers. I worked across functions. And then came the exciting part of brand management where I launched ET Young Leaders. I used to work very closely with for ET Awards. I used to lead ET Awards. I used to lead Brand Equity Quiz. A lot of exciting stuff. And then I suddenly, despite all the excitement and all this fun that I was having, I just felt that I need to do something else. I need to learn some more. I need to figure out something new. If you've noticed up till now, I've moved industries. So I began with advertising, then I moved to banking, and then I moved to the media house. So I was like, okay, which industry should I go next? What sector should I catch next? What should I do next? And I was looking out and not actively, but I was kind of looking out and figuring out where I wanted to go. And there, MIF came on to my lap and I was invited for an interview. I had an interview. It was very exciting to see a foundation doing work towards innovation and trying to figure out how to work and infuse innovations in the country. And that was exciting. And I said, I have no idea about innovation. I know a lot. I don't know everything. I know a lot about brand management, but I don't know enough about innovation. And I said, let me see what this is. And it was an opportunity to report directly into Mr. Harsh Mariwala. And I said, this is a great opportunity. Let me see what I can do with it. And that's when I joined 7 years ago. And that has been my journey until MIF. And MIF actually changed the way one looks at things, and it just changed my perspective completely. Joined at a time when innovation was not the buzzword. The startup world was just beginning to be taken up with Flipkart. I don't even think Ola was there, Uber was there at that point in time, 7 years ago. Maybe they were there and they were really small, maybe in the international arenas and not in the Indian arenas. So it was a very nascent stage where innovation was not a buzzword in the corporate world too. And that was when I joined this place. And And the way we've worked with innovators, the way we've worked with entrepreneurs, the way we've worked across the ecosystem, the changes one has seen in the ecosystem over the last 7 years is kind of quite amazing, quite breathtaking, if you ask me. Uh, and the reason I joined this place was because I said I will learn and hopefully I will give back. And I think that every day in the last 7 years, I have learned so much. I have learned so much that I'm so thrilled that I took this jump from marketing and moved into innovation and with the startup world, and seeing how I can work closely with them and help them in multiple ways. I'm the kind of person that leaves industry in 4.5 years. Every move that I've happened has been in 4.5 years. This role has kept me on for 7 years and is energizing me even today. So what is exciting about what I'm doing is something that kind of baffles me at times too, because on the one hand, it's a role, it's the head of the foundation, but on the other hand, the ability to be able to achieve so much, and a small dent, a small change in something can achieve so much more, is, I think, such an energizing and exciting journey for me. When I joined Marico Innovation Foundation, it was really unknown. Even I didn't know about it, and nobody knew about it externally, internally, etc. And I said, okay, for me, joining MIF is almost like joining a startup. So for me, it's almost like getting a germ of an idea, and then I had to sit and make a tree out of it. When I joined the foundation, there was not much of innovations happening externally. We tried to figure out what we had to do. And then I like creating. And the first thing we created was the MIF Scale Up program, which is a program that is meant to work with scale ups and help them grow their business. And so the whole creation of the idea, the whole understanding of what startups want, what is our strength, how do we bring in Marico members into the picture, how do we build a program that is beneficial to the entrepreneurial world, beneficial to MIF, beneficial to Marico's talent pool, who's with so much of intelligence, and make them play the role of a mentor. So that was the first program that I created, and that was. And the fun of the charm about the program is that there were enough and more incubators and accelerators already in the startup world. So how do you since you're an innovation foundation, how do you make yourself different? So you speak to entrepreneurs, you just realize that a lot of people give them advice, but very few people tell them how to proceed with the advice. What next? Okay, you should have a marketing campaign. So therefore, what should the starting point be? What is the brief? Can we have some questions on the brief? And that is where we felt that, if we're able to help them with cleaning up their operational efficiencies, it'll really be useful to them as organizations. And that's the germ of the idea that was set out. And now we've worked with over 35, 40 organizations. We've got about 150 internal and external mentors in the system. Every year we clock over 100 mentor hours. Our cohort at any point in time is about 12 to 15 organizations. So you see the journey from where it began in 2015 to now. It's been a very inspiring journey. So I think if you ask me, the last 7 years, the ability to create something out of nothing, which hopefully will have significant value to the target audience. In my case, it's the innovation or the entrepreneur, is what has kept me going. And I think I'm hoping that journey continues for as long as I'm here. When the pandemic hit, just before the pandemic hit, we had organizations in our cohort that had really poised for growth, and they were really thinking of doing extremely well. And they had their plans for the year where they were hoping to move from 40 crores to 100 crores, whatever, they had their agendas and their plans. And then the pandemic hit. And what we first thought was a 15-day thing, 1 month thing, 2 month thing, 3 month thing, just went on and on and on. So from the startup's point of view, I think the first thing that they realized is they have to be patient, and they had to dig their heels and figure out how to survive. Survival became the key for the first 6 months of the last year. And the reason I'm saying this is because I know even large corporates face the same problem. Everybody dug their heels and said, let us just put our heads down and think of surviving, and let's not think of being ambitious at this point in time. I think that's the first thing. Everybody step back and say, let us be conscious of what we're doing. As a result of that, whether it's the corporate world or the startup world, everybody began working on their processes. They began getting more and more efficient. They began saying, given what I have, can I do double? Given what I have, can I take half the amount to do what I'm currently doing? So they began focusing a lot on processes. With our startup cohort, what we began doing was, Marico was doing a lot of these efficiency building processes and best practices, etc. So we began taking those best practices and sharing it with our cohort, sharing it with our ecosystem, sharing it with the startup world, telling them this is what HR is doing. This is how we're looking at people management. This is what we're doing at multiple other things. And as a result of that, there was a lot of cross learning that one had. The startups began learning a lot from the corporate world. So our cohorts, for example, we got them into conversations with our supply chain people, with our HR team, to get them to see what we're doing in Marico, to see what they can do in their organization. And I think around October, November onwards, we saw the flight happening again. And now we find a lot of organizations getting back into their ambition mode and getting back into wanting to ambitiously move on and scale up to newer heights. So from us overall startup world, I think this is what we've noticed, that 6 months was a pause. Some of them unfortunately didn't manage to stay afloat, but those that stayed afloat, I think they have learned. I think they now have far efficient businesses than before, hopefully. Another thing that I noticed about the startup world was when the pandemic struck, we were told that, innovation is, we need innovations to help the whole COVID challenge. And what do we do with it? You have to think innovatively. And that's when we launched the Innovativate COVID Challenge, which is the challenge to identify PP and ventilator, innovations that we can spend, because, the frontline really needed these two products really urgently, and we were in a rush to find them. So I think the lockdown happened on the 22nd, and I think by the 29th or the 30th, we'd already launched this program because we were in a rush to, find these innovations. And I remember thinking when I was launching this program, we'll get about 50, 100 innovations. We look at it as a team ourselves, and we'll identify and figure out and see what we can do. It was a grant-based program. We got 1,200 total applications, of which 650 were really relevant applications. 100 of them went to, experts in the PPN and the ventilator space. 30 of them were presented to the jury, and 5 of them were given funding and scale-up support. So we just realized that when the going gets tough, the tough really got going. We have 3 ventilator winners. All 3 of them began working on ventilators once the pandemic hit. Say around Feb mid, internationally when it hit, say around Feb mid. So it's not, and then you realize that this is the true innovation mindset that we have, right? When you're pushed into a corner, it's not jugaad. It is innovation that is leading forward. So this is second thing that one sees in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, that there's a lot of innovations coming. I don't think the spirit has died down, and I think since October onwards, since there's been an upward trajectory again, I think buoyancy is already back in the ecosystem. As far as our lives are concerned, there's nothing much I can say that has already not been said by your other speakers. But personally, if you ask me, I never realized I would be so efficient at home. I never realized that I would not miss coming to work as often. And I think if we do it smartly, if we manage things smartly, I think this dual pattern of working from home and coming to work, every once in a while, would be my go-to for the next many years. So I think that what I have noticed, one very important thing that I've noticed is that a lot of innovations have moved from being relevant to urban audiences to relevant to even the rural audience, or focus largely on the rural audience. I see dissemination of innovation products, or the potential to disseminate it, far more these days than it was maybe even a couple of years ago. The fortunate thing about the pandemic is that the woman was actually pushed to a corner, because on the one hand, she had to continue working, because there's expectations from from your organization that you should continue working. On the other hand, she had to manage her children because they weren't going to work. I mean, they weren't going to school or college. She had to manage home because there was no house help, cooking. I mean, the others were helping, but it was not co-owning. So I think the pandemic has actually been um, worst suited for women. But I think what it has done that it has got the man to realize that working from home and having flexible hours doesn't mean you need to get half salary, because otherwise it was only women who normally used to work from home and therefore get have flexi hours. But now everybody's realized that you're as efficient wherever you work. So I think that is one thing which is good for the women, if you ask me. So I'll be honest with you. I come from very privileged background. I come from a background where women and men are treated equally. When my elder brother became a doctor and I chose arts because I was keen on creativity and arts, my family was disappointed. They wanted me to be a doctor too. So I come in from an environment where, you have to be good. It doesn't matter what gender you're in. And that is what I think took me in all these years to where I am right now. But I don't know whether that's what people see these days, and that's the experience of most other people. So my journey in the last 20 years as a professional has been fairly easy, to the extent that I'm able to articulate what I have to say, and therefore I'm able to move on with the ability to influence, etc. But I'm not sure whether that's something that one can see with other women leaders or other women entrepreneurs. So if you ask me, it's been a smooth journey for me. I've gone where my heart has taken me. I've never hunted for a job because I wanted to leave the earlier job. I've always got the job because I was wanting to try something interesting and something different. But I kept myself at the center of the whole story. I wanted to go, and therefore I went. And I think that is something that has driven me all along in the last 20 years. Perhaps what I've noticed is that I've seen attitude towards women in workplace change in the last 20 years. Maybe when I joined, of course, I joined in the advertising world, and I joined in City, and I joined in the media world, and they're all very women-strong organizations. And maybe again, it's it's not right for me to have a view on this, but I find that maybe it was a lot more difficult for a woman to convince somebody to hire them 20 years ago as it is now. So for example, 20 years ago, a lot of interviewers landed up asking you, so what is your plans? Are you trying to get married? If you're married, you have children? I don't think we've asked that in the last so many years. So I think at some point, we don't ask that to a man, but you ask that to a woman 20, 25, 30 years ago. So I think that transformation has slowly begun happening, at least in the larger organizations, the larger, more aware, more empathizing organizations. And I'm hoping that it will percolate down to the other smaller organizations. But this is one thing that I've noticed very starkly, and I'm very proud and positive about this shift. I find that a lot of large organizations have an agenda to bring in women and have equal gender workforces and stuff like that. And I think that's fantastic. But I think at some point you have to also look beyond man and woman into the other segment, and you have to be far more inclusion. We're still struggling with including women, but what about the others, right? So I think that is I think that we have a long journey to go to, but I'm hoping that in my work time, I'll be able to see that shift happen also. Like I've seen so many shifts happen in the professional and in the innovation space. Hopefully I'll be able to meet you 10 years from now saying, hey, this is another shift that we noticed in the sector, where it's not just men and women, but everybody who is included in the workforce. I think one thing that I have learned as a leader, and also being fortunate to have worked with leaders who are so empathizing and so Look, I'm a product of the people I've interacted with professionally. And from my first job, I've always had um, leaders who believed in me, who felt that I could achieve the moon and pushed me to do that. And they really mentored me. And I think I always feel that the moment I became somebody who had a team working with me, I think that was something that I would keep focusing on. I focus a lot on mentorship and empowering, because I feel if it's empowered and enriched me, it should enrich the people around me. Because my personal belief is that if a person comes to an organization to work, the organization is giving them the laptop, the space, the AC, the salary, everything. What is the job of the supervisor? Supervise? I mean, that's so transactional, right? So I personally believe the job of the supervisor is to actually groom this person to take over your role. And this is a belief that I've actually got from my first boss in my advertising agency. And I've actually loved the way he kept telling me that and actually implemented it. And I hope to keep doing that as long as I'm in the working profession and I have teams working with me. I really hope that this is something that I keep doing throughout. The first thing is make yourself the center of everything. We end up usually wanting to be so useful to the others that we forget to be useful to ourselves. Invest in yourself is one way of saying it, but I think the larger point I'm trying to make is that, if you believe that you need to be happy and you focus on making yourself happy without hurting anybody else, automatically the others get happy. And this is something that I've always believed in. If I'm happy, if I'm in a fantastic frame of mind, I'll make everybody around me happy. But if I'm upset, angry, burdened, hassled, you can imagine, it's so difficult to keep people happy around me, right? So I think the first thing is to make sure you're in a happy state at all points in time. Which brings me to an additional addendum to that point. If at any point you feel you're not happy, if there's something that's bothering you, you're unable to solve for it yourself, do make it a point to seek external help. It could be a friend, it could be a counselor, it could be anybody. Just don't hold on to it yourself. Find a way to solve for your problems. It's a very important thing that I have learned in the last many years of my existence, and I've been here for really long. The second point that I want to talk about is, as far as possible, try having a passion beyond work. Don't let work and family be all consuming to you. The good thing is today's generation, gender neutral, doesn't matter. They're all having a life beyond work and family. But for me, that journey began really late. About 7-8 years ago, I began learning dancing. And I began, learning this art form. I began getting deeper and deeper into this art form. And then I realized that what my learnings were, the discipline in the art form was reflecting on my discipline at work. The joy that I get in my art form was reflecting in the joy that I was able to bring into work. Fitness, of course, is a different thing. So find a passion beyond work and focus and just give it all that you have. You never know before you know it, it'll be a part of your professional life, and it just makes work so energizing. It just makes you so energizing. When I was in the Economic Times and City, if you hunt for somebody in the marketing, if you want to pick up somebody in the marketing team, you pick up a typical person who's done marketing in the past, MBA in marketing. And you just go on that, just pick that up. And then I joined MIF and I had to pick up people. I began experimenting with the people I picked up. And I realized that the CA rank holder is as creative as the marketing person. The marketing person is as strong in business and with numbers as a CA. And then you realize that you just put yourself into silos. So when you're looking at hiring, when you're looking at finding the right person to pick up, I think it's very important that you look at individual and not at the fact that he's a rank holder or he's come from a prestigious organization or a school those are all great. But I found I found people who are not CA rank holders who are far more intelligent than CA rank holders, or far more eclectic, or far more diverse in their thinking. So don't make the mistake we've done, and be a little diverse in your selection of team and management of team.